we have with us, the whole point of this Rural Summit is to introduce you to and give you a chance to interact with your Democratic candidates who are running for State House, to restore some balance to the General Assembly, which has a supermajority right now. I could go on all night about the challenges I face as a mayor with some of the things that the General Assembly does that impacts our community and hurts the residents of the city of Charlestown, but I won't, because it's not about me, it's about them. Some of them are going to be joining us on the panel because they are your more local candidates, and some of them are just here to show support. And that's what's fantastic about this group of people. There are several of these summits happening all over the state, and this group of individuals that have stepped forward to run, they're going and they're supporting one another, because that's the key. They really need to get elected so they can help restore balance into that current supermajority in the state government. And so I'm going to call out all the ones who are running so you can hear their names. Some of them are here with us. A few of them are not. The ones who were unable to make it tonight were Sarah Blessing for House District 70. She covers parts of Harrison, Clark, Floyd, and Washington County. So she would have been here with us at panel, but illness kept her away. But most of these candidates have social media, so you can check them out. So Sarah Blessing for House District 70. Teresa Kendall was unable to be here with us tonight. She's with House District 63. Holly Payton, House District 73, was unable to be here. And then a new sign-up, Victoria Martz for House District 55. But the ones that we have with us tonight are Michelle Higgs with House District 60. We have Thomas Horrocks from House District 62, and Michael Potter from House District 47. We have Trish Whitcomb with House District 69, Jennifer David with District 66, Ross Thomas from House District 59. There's Ross. So I mentioned that we have these three that are a little bit closer that are going to be answering some questions that we have, and then finally also addressing some questions from the audience. Next to me is Jennifer David. I know Jennifer personally. She's a Charlestown lady. And Jennifer and I have worked together a lot in the city of Charlestown to make our city a more accessible place, a place where everybody, regardless of their ability level, can come and live and thrive or visit. We want to care about our visitors too. Jennifer has a unique story about how she stepped into this, and I don't know if she'll get a chance to share some of that through our questions or not, but she felt she was called to action because of things that she's passionate about. She also is the owner, director, manager, brain behind Outward Bound Support Services, which does a lot to work in the community. So welcome, Jennifer, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for coming and doing this for us.
Absolutely. Next to Jennifer is Ross Thomas, and Ross represents Bartholomew County, so he's from a little bit away, but not too far. And the important thing is we need to have conversations about things, and so you may have some friends in Bartholomew County. It's important. He's been an attorney for 31 years. He is the Democrat chair in Bartholomew County. But I think that when I was meeting Ross, one of the things that struck me is that he's been the director of a rec league for a baseball team where he works with like 11-year-old for 20 years. I mean, that takes a lot. And that's where we live our lives, or in those everyday moments. And so when I asked Ross, like, hey, what's important to you? He said public education, reproductive freedom, and he really wants to find a way to generate revenue and legalize marijuana so that we have a tax base that maybe your property taxes won't have to be so high anymore. So he's doing the work of everybody out there on the field. And then down on the end is Trish Whitcomb with House District 69. That's Bartholomew, Jackson, Scott, and Washington counties. She's a seventh-generation Hoosier, a former special education teacher, and she was a manager for the successful election of Glenda Ritz in 2012, right? And so Trish also comes to us with that background of just living everyday life and caring for the community as a special ed teacher. So I think what's so great about our panelists with this kind of an approach is that, you know, we have our titles, we have our jobs, we have our careers, but we're Hoosiers. We're Hoosiers who are living that everyday life. We're going to the grocery store with you. We are trying to find opportunities for our children, and some of us our grandchildren. We are trying to work with youth in our communities. We're trying to have our families thrive, and all of these people have been motivated to run for office because what they're seeing is not getting those things done, right? So we have a few questions. I prepared a few questions. Some of them have seen these because I emailed them at the last minute, and some of them haven't because that's just the way we roll sometimes. But I think these are all issues that they really care about. And so with this panel discussion, I want to make sure everybody has time to answer. I've already warned them that if they start to go too long, I will stop them because I want to make sure we have time for a rich conversation. But the important thing that I want the audience to take away is that if you hear them answering something and it motivates you to think about how you have further questions about that, you don't have to expect an answer from them tonight in this space, because they're going to be available for you to connect with after. And so if you want them to elaborate on something that they just don't have time in tonight's event to do, they will talk to you. They will elaborate, okay? But let's kick off the conversation with some things that have been happening lately. Let's go with education. All of you have jobs that you have worked with children or volunteer events you've worked with children. And so the Indiana high school diploma requirements are being revised this year. And after initial recommendations raised sharp concerns from educators about their ability to prepare students for college enrollment, a new iteration of the plan released just the past couple of days creates a base diploma and then gives students the ability to earn seals or pluses to reach college enrollment criteria. So my question is, if elected, what will you do to ensure that Hoosier children have access to quality public school education in grades K through 12? Trish, you're the low-hanging fruit here because you were a special ed teacher, so we'll start with you, and then we'll just move down the line.
I hope no one thinks that this is a softball question for me, because I'll tell you, I have spent my entire career in education in one way or another, and what I've seen happen to the funding for public schools is a travesty. The first thing that people need to understand, and I don't think they know, is that when you hear about school choice, I want you to think about something else. I want you to think about the money that should be spent to educate students here in our locality is going to rich families in Indianapolis to send their kids to public schools or to private schools. The voucher money comes right off the top, and that hurts every one of our wonderful public schools down here. So that's number one. The second thing is they really have diluted the standards for being a classroom teacher now. You don't even have to have graduated from college. So if anybody would like to go to, let's say, Tim Peck, who is a wonderful physician and has taken all the courses and the internships, think about that when you think about who is teaching your child in public schools. It could be somebody who doesn't have 1 minute of education training. And then the last thing I'd like to say, I'm going to say two more things really quickly. In the last session of the General Assembly, they pushed down I Read 3 test to I Read 2. And if a child, I'm all for people to learn how to read. I mean, I was a reading specialist. I know about this. But they are going to mandatory retention for third graders if they can't pass I Read 3. That's a standardized test. A kid doesn't have a good night of sleep. He comes into school and he fails that test. He's held back. I don't believe that. I think that is wrong. I think we need supports for younger kids as they come along. The mandatory age of attendance in Indiana is at age 7. You're going to give that kid a test the next year and tell him that is going to be your reading level? No. And then the last thing I promise is they've already announced, the Republicans have already announced a mandatory consolidation. They want to have a bill next year that they will pass, mandatory consolidation of local schools. If your school corporation is less than 5,000 students, you have to consolidate. So that means everybody in Scott County is going to go to one school. That means everybody in Jackson County is going to go to one school. Everybody in Washington County is going to go to one school. So these are critical things that really damage student performance, and I'm going to vote against all of them. So there you go.
Thank you, Trish. Okay, let's hear from Russ.
So what you're going to hear a lot repeated again and again tonight is that the Republicans have been in charge of public education in this state for over 20 years. And we have some of the lowest results in the country. What they want to do, and make no mistake about it, what they want to do is destroy public education. They don't believe in public education. What they would like to see is your tax dollars going to their friends who run private schools. That is a dream come true for the Republicans. Vouchers are a boondoggle. They have always been a boondoggle. They are about taking your money and giving it to their rich friends to run schools, and also to give it to their rich friends to send their kids to private school. We have to reject it. We have to cherish public education in this state. You know, I grew up on a farm over in Jennings County. I went to Vernon Elementary in Vernon, Indiana, an old school that was built in about 1920. Mm-hmm. But you know, I got a pretty good education there. We had standards at the time. Our teachers had master's degrees. Our teachers were well paid. You might not know this, but teachers in Indiana make less today in real dollars than they did 20 years ago. Right. This is a race to the bottom, ladies and gentlemen, and we shouldn't tolerate it. I've got 3 kids. 2 of them are in college. My youngest daughter just started high school. Proud public education students. We should not stand by and have a Republican Party that tells us, look, education doesn't matter. These new diplomas, what they're really doing, if you look at it, is say you can get a diploma essentially if you drop out of high school after your sophomore year and go to work for minimum wage. That's not what education is about. We should not be the state that is training low-wage workers, and we should not be encouraging students to race to the bottom. We should be racing to the top. We know how to do it. We just have to reject the people who have rejected public education.
Thank you, Ross. Okay, Jennifer?
There's a lot there. There's just so much going on with education in the state of Indiana. But the fact of the matter is that, again, the Republicans have been in charge for 20 years. And they are the ones that are making the decisions. They are the ones that set the budget. They're the ones that took the voters' right away to even elect the superintendent of public education. And the last elected one was Jennifer McCormick. So, you know, when I make it to the State House, I really would like to advocate for younger education. You know, kids need to be reading by the age of 3. But as Trish said, if they don't even have to actually go to school till 7 years old, I mean, that's a no-brainer right there. And so I really would like to advocate that the state of Indiana is funding preschool. I know here in Scott County, the budget has been cut because there was some mismanagement with the funds, and I'm pretty sure that one of the preschools has closed. And so we're not adding, we're taking away. And so that is one of the things I would really like to advocate for. The other thing is special education, because students in special education, those are the ones that are going to be left at the schools that are not going to have any money, while other students that can be able to get places are going to be taking that money with them. And what I think a lot of people don't understand is that vouchers, even if a student decides to go to a school and goes there, they don't follow the same rules, and they can kick students out. But the problem is they kick the student out, and the student goes back to the school it came from, but that voucher school keeps that money. That money stays there until, I think twice a year they have, what are the count days? Count days. And so that is something I really feel needs to be changed with our education system. If a student goes back to his school, that money needs to go there. It needs to go back because they are educating that student without the funds. One other thing that I would really like to see, I do actually have a master's degree in special education, but I am not a teacher. I've always worked with people out in the community or in their homes on the Medicaid waiver program. And there is a rule that you cannot use Medicaid waiver services in schools, but I have seen that done with nursing services and some other things. So I really think that is something that we need to explore because we do have a large group of professionals. I'm a board-certified behavior analyst, which means I help change behavior so people can have a better quality of life, and that is something that the teachers need. We have teachers that their degree is in teaching and in special education, but it's not necessarily in how to assess and help to change behaviors. And that's really what a lot of the teachers are dealing with, especially teachers that have a classroom that has just a variety of students with a lot of different needs. They may not be behavioral needs initially, but a lot of times they end up developing because they are really just kind of left to themselves if they are not causing problems at school sometimes. So those are just a few things that I would like to address when I get to the State House.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I love it when when I come up with questions and the answers tend to kind of flow into that. So it sounds like everybody on this panel and everybody who wants to be in the State House, is looking for a future for our children. And they understand that public education is critical to that future. And when we think about our futures, and we think about creating opportunities for our youth today and to make things easier, one thing we want them to be able to do is live in our communities.
Yes.
We don't want brain drain. We don't want them leaving to go work and live somewhere else. We want them to stay right here and stay Hoosiers for life. And one of the things that makes that hard to do is finding a place to live. And so several agencies, and this is going to be a bit of a complex question because we've had an audience submission that has complicated this question that I wrote originally, and so it's going to be a test of your fortitude. And Ross, you're up first, so listen carefully. Several agencies, including the National Low Income Housing Coalition, have documented a strong need for affordable rental homes in Indiana. Likewise, home ownership has been a difficult mark for families to obtain with the soaring housing costs. So my original question was, how will you in the General Assembly tackle this issue? However, we've had an audience member who has drawn attention to the often small town decline that occurs when we lose agricultural land to housing incentives. So this is a complicated issue to balance, where there is a strong need for affordable housing of all sorts, rental and to purchase, but also a need to balance growth and development with available agricultural land in their rural communities. So when you're elected, what steps will you take to address the housing crisis and land use in our communities?
Great. So one of the problems with affordable housing is the influx of outside money, literally hedge funds coming into our state and buying up property sight unseen for cash. Guess what that does? That drives up property values. That drives up costs if you want to get into that market. If you are a young family and you're competing against a billionaire, you're probably not going to get that house. So we need to address the issue. Look, it's a complex thing. Someone has money, they can buy a house, but if you are talking about almost unlimited money that's going to come into your community and then just start buying property, it really affects not only rents, but it also affects the ability to buy a house. And that has to be addressed. I would suggest that there ought to be some connection to the state of Indiana if you're going to buy property, particularly if you're going to buy multiple properties. That's the first thing. Another thing that is connected to affordable housing is rural and regional transportation. So we have a terrible transportation infrastructure in our area. And it forces people, look, if there is a reliable transportation system, say between North Vernon, where I grew up, and Columbus, where I live, people could more easily live in a place like North Vernon, where it's cheaper, if they knew that they had reliable transportation to get to work in Columbus. That is something around the area that if we had better transportation, it would be easier for folks to find affordable housing where there is less demand. As far as dealing with sprawl, I mean, personally, I think that's a local issue that is unique to every community. It definitely should be something that is addressed, particularly, again, if you're talking about outside developers coming in and building. But overall, we have to do something about the demand for housing. So as long as there's a demand, there is going to be expansion. But we should, both for environmental reasons, urban sprawl, as they call it. I'm someone that would believe, look, if that's your farmland and you want to sell it to a developer, I can lament. I mean, I grew up on a farm, raising cattle over in Jennings County. I guess my position would be, and it might be different than the questioner, if I'm a farmer and I've got a chance to provide for my family by selling part of that property, as a legislator, I'm not going to stand in your way. But I am going to make sure that the people that are doing those developments have some tie to the local community, that they do it responsibly, that it's going to be sustainable, and ultimately, though, we've got to address the demand for housing, and that everywhere involves, additional sources for housing.
Great. I want to talk about what Ross just did. Ross just did a very brave thing. And I can say that because I hold elected office. Ross didn't give you a soft answer. He didn't give you the answer that he thinks the questioner wanted to hear. Because the way the question was written, it leads you to kind of understand what they're getting at. He gave you an honest answer, and he gave you an answer based off of what he knows the job of a person who sits in the General Assembly can and what their role is. You have multiple layers of government. I administer an entire city, and I can tell you from my perspective that one of the complaints from county and city officials is that we have General Assembly members who pass laws that don't fit our communities. And so Ross just laid it out, and he said, it's our job at the General Assembly to make sure that we have set standards in place for building and codes and those kinds of things that the developers have to meet, that are ethical and that are fair and sustainable. But I'm going to give that other issue down to the local government where it belongs. And Ross, I commend you for a brave answer and for knowing your job, because that's something you don't often see from candidates that are running on the Republican side. I see it firsthand all the time. They'll say whatever they need to say to get elected. Okay, and we'll address that in a little bit more when I ask about property taxes. But I want to expand on this question. They don't all have to answer the exact same question, but I want to go with that theme, and I'm going to take this one first to Trish, and then I'm going to build on it for Jennifer. So Trish, building on that theme of what the General Assembly can do, what your job actually is in these kinds of things, what other kind of relief or what other kind of actions could you take as a state rep to create pathways to home ownership for people that are trying to get into that, or the recognition that some people don't want to own a home, they want to rent, and how do we manage those goals?
Treva, when I made my announcement speech, I said, I'm not running to be the mayor of every town in this district, but I will tell you this. I know that as a state representative, we have the opportunity to know about programs that are available statewide. We know the opportunities to find out about. I'm glad Terry's running for LG, but when he was at USDA Rural Development, I worked with them. It's a great resource, but I feel like the first thing that I would do as an elected official is to open my door and say, these are the resources. Our communities are not taking advantage of them, and they are there. And if we don't take advantage of these programs, those dollars are going to go someplace else. So that's one thing. The Indiana Community and Housing Agency, they have all kinds of down payment assistance programs. I don't know if anybody here knows. First-time home buyers, they have a lot of different things for seniors. There are so many ways that people can participate in home ownership that I feel I never hear anybody talking about it down here. And the other thing that I wanted to say, which since you've congratulated Ross on being very brave, I'm going to talk about this. Our Indiana General Assembly is so dedicated to owners of rental property that Indiana is only one of 20 states where there is no mediation forced for people to, if I was renting a place and the plumbing didn't work, I would want to have a structure, because maybe everybody in this room is a good landowner and a good apartment renter, but there are situations, once you get evicted, especially for non-payment, and some people don't pay their rent because they're fixing their house, you can't get another place to live. And in the last session of the General Assembly, the Republicans shortened the days for eviction from 10 to 3. If you get evicted, you have to find a place to live in 3 days. I don't know too many people can do that.
No.
So I think that it's a combination of bringing more resources down here and letting people know what's available to them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Trish. So, Jennifer, same basic conversation, but let's take it home for a minute. Okay. Jennifer will be representing me when I vote for her and she gets elected. In the city of Charlestown, because that's one of the areas that she covers. Also parts of Jefferson, Scott, and that's it? Okay. So we had a situation where if we take Ross's advice and we punt some of these things down to local, and we listen to what Trish has to say about removing those barriers and talking about assistance that's available, and we think about those incentives that exist, that are in place, incentivizing programs. Think of it like when you're in that parenting class and they tell you to reward the positive behavior, right? We had a situation in Charlestown where it was last year or late the year before, I get fuzzy on the timeline, where we had Rauch Inc. coming to look at building accessible, affordable rental homes in Charlestown for people who have disabilities and for senior citizens, specifically targeting those, but they were income-based and they were a wonderful program. Rauch has a fantastic reputation in Floyd County and New Albany and other places. They're a great organization. And it failed because the council in the city of Charlestown would not vote to change the zoning, right? So there it comes to local control, and they would not vote to change the zoning. So we want affordable, we want accessible homes. As a state representative, how would you incentivize a community to be more flexible with their zoning and their local controls in order to create these opportunities?
So this is a great question, because not only have I dealt with what Treva's talking about, I also had an opportunity to meet with community, Henryville, which is not far from here, when they were talking about some concerns with zoning. So first of all, just going back to the disability housing, I really feel like a lot of that, of course, was political. It really should have been passed. But I think one thing that I could do, not at the State House, but at home, locally, is to be there and to talk to people and to motivate people to stand up for their rights and to be outspoken and go to the commissioners' meetings and the county council meetings and speak up for what it is that they want for their community. I guarantee you, had we packed that room, the city council meeting, and there was a lot more pressure, and there was a lot more that the community knows. Those houses would have passed, and they would have been built by now, and they would have not just served people with disabilities, but they would have served have seniors living there and other people, different types of families. So it is very unfortunate that did not happen. On the flip side of that, we live in a community here, in Clark and Scott County that it is growing because of River Ridge, which is going to be bringing a lot more business, a lot more people, a lot more jobs, and we're going to need some houses. So Henryville, they had met recently. They are looking to incorporate because they are concerned with some of the redistricting. And not to go into that, but my point is that the power of the people, and that's what they kept talking about is, they may not have a lot of money, but they have people, and so just coming together, they educating each other on what their options are, also having representatives there, local elected officials to be able to talk with that and share concerns. So. As you know, I'm obviously not at the State House, so I can't really tell you what I would do from that end, but I know just, on the ground level, these are things this is where I would start, because I think education and talking is really the starting point.
You might not be there yet, Jennifer, but what I hear is that you're willing to be transparent, and that is something we do not have right now. The person that Jennifer is running to replace doesn't have that quality. We know that because I've heard from multiple people who have tried to email Zach and have never gotten an answer. So Jennifer, it sounds like you're willing to be in the community, be visible in the communities, and be transparent. Ross is bravely answering your questions and saying, I'm going to give local control to local people, and I'm going to do what I can where I'm supposed to do it. And Trish obviously has an understanding of the way that these incentives work and the opportunities that are there. And she's going to make sure that she's also being out there and transparent with people. I want to remind you, if you have questions, to go ahead and get those done. We'll be taking the last round of those questions. I've been circling through them, and some that are a little bit duplicate or a little bit more nuanced that require a little more one-on-one time with them, I've held back, but I will give them all to the candidates so they can see them. But this is your last call to get any questions that you wanted to have up here. I wanted to take an opportunity to talk about one of the most significant issues that I've seen both on social media and in the news, and that is property taxes. So I hope you've done your research. Jennifer, you're going to be up first here. So almost everyone is seeing higher property tax bills, and it's no surprise that property tax relief is a significant topic right now, with it being an election year. Recently, the Braun-Beckwith campaign announced their property tax relief plan that would reset tax revenues back to 2021 levels. For perspective, that means the city of Charlestown would lose $1 million of its budget, $1 million. Schools, police, and fire departments, libraries, municipal governments have expressed alarm about such a huge decrease in their operating budgets with such a plan that offers no revenue replacement. The Braun-Beckwith plan has not offered any revenue replacement, nor have they done any analysis of what the actual impact on the communities would be. So, how will you work to ensure that Hoosiers see some tax relief while still receiving access to critical local government services?
Well, I don't know if any of you caught the lieutenant governor debate the other day, Tuesday, and the Gooden and McCormick plan is for us to grow our way out of this, which makes sense to me since we are growing all the time. We are growing on some ways, but in others, we are losing people, especially our young people, to other states. However, again, we're fortunate where we live in that Charlestown, Clark County, and Scott County, we do have a lot of resources, and we do have the opportunity to add more jobs, which again means more housing, which goes back to the last question. I feel like it's just a catch-22, that the obvious answer is not the Republican plan. Because, again, I will remind you, as we all will, that they have been in office for the last 20 years. So this is their doing, and it's not any better when the taxes are also going away because of the education crisis that we're in, and now the tax crisis. So I'll just be honest, I'm not going to pretend that I have the answers. but I am very well aware of what is going on, and I think it's a bigger picture than what a lot of people know, and it's been very helpful for me running for state rep for the area that I am, because it forces me to be in all these different areas. So I am able to hear what's going on in Scott County and see how that connects with what's going on in Clark County. So I really like just continuing to do that work and not just seeing myself as a Clark County person, but that this is a region, and which is, again, why we have this rural summit, because it helps to connect us Hoosiers so we can talk about the issues and also work together to find solutions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Okay, Ross, you're up. Let's hear what you have to say about property tax relief.
So the first thing that I would say is Republicans who talk to you about taxes simply say, we should cut taxes, the end. That's not reality. You're not stupid. You understand that we pay taxes in order to get services. As the mayor said, look, we pay our teachers, we pay our firemen, we pay our police officers, we pay lots of public servants that we rely on. That money does not fall out of the sky. So when a Republican comes to you and says, I'm just going to cut your taxes, yippee, come on. You all are not stupid, and you understand that we've got to deal with a problem in an intelligent way and not magical thinking of Republicans. You've got to reject that, even though it sounds damn good, right? Let's just not pay any taxes. It sounds terrific. You got to reject that because it's stupid, okay? So part of the issue with property taxes goes back to kind of what we talked about earlier about housing. When you've got a bunch of money coming into the state buying property for cash sight unseen, guess what? The cost of those houses goes up. Your equity rises. I've lived in the same little house in Columbus for 23 years. I can tell you, my house is worth a lot more than when I bought it. Now, that's a good thing. But guess what? My property taxes have gone up. That's just math. So part of it is understandably sticker shock, but you also have to realize that your equity has gone up as well. However, there are plenty of people, particularly retired folks who've lived in the same house forever. They're not speculators, and they're really hurt. We've got to address that. So I think the first thing that I would do when you're talking about property taxes is we ought to make an exception for retirees, disabled people, folks on a fixed income, to have some property tax relief. Now, you have to be smart about it. You can't just say that across the board, or you'll have those hedge funds moving grandma into every house they own. It's got to be, hey, I've lived in this house for 10 years. I've lived in this house for 15 years. Can't be about speculation, but we can protect and recognize that and give property tax relief to those folks. We could raise the homestead exemption for people who actually live in their house and not a speculator who just bought 25 rental properties. So we can be smart about it. The Republican plan, as you might imagine, what it gets down to is we're going to have property tax relief for mansions. That's really what they want, right? We got property tax relief for mansions, and we got to make that money up somewhere. And guess where that's going to come from? You all know where it's going to come from. It's going to come from you and me. So we can get property tax relief. We can be smart about it, and those folks ought to pay their fair share at the top and not try to take it out of working people's pockets.
It sounds like Ross has a lot to say about property taxes, and we love that. but I am going to cut him off a little bit so he doesn't take time away from Trish to be able to answer the same question. This is an example of one of those things that you could let Ross follow up with you after. Thank you, Ross, for your passionate response. And I agree with you. I actually got in trouble on my X feed for saying that, this plan is ridiculous because he's just lying and he thinks that you're stupid. And somebody said, "You're calling Republicans stupid." I said, "No." I said, "He thinks you're that way. Prove him different." But Trish, what can we do? How can we offer some Hoosiers some relief who need it, but not at the sacrifice of these critical services?
I've been looking at property tax and the impact on education since I was in graduate school before I went to work for Birch Bayh, so that tells you it's been a while. And I'll tell you what, we have been taking our property tax plans and we've been like, "Oh, let's tear this up and put it over here, and let's do this, and let's do that." Now is the time for an overhaul of the property tax system entirely. People need to know that they are going to be able to afford, especially farmers, because I hear this from farmers, and I don't begrudge anybody who sells their farm and gets a bunch of money for their family and goes their merry way. What I worry about is those sales impact the assessed valuation for family farms, people who want to live on their farms, people who have been on their farms for generations. Their taxes are going up through nothing that they've done. So I'm very interested in that. There are some things that the conservation units in Indiana have a band of increase for your taxes. It's reliable, it's dependable, and I'm just saying that there are so many loopholes and cracks and little move this around here that we need to take an overall look at the tax policies. And let's not forget, maybe we don't fund all this stuff out of property tax. Maybe we go for income tax. And, everybody pays a flat rate of tax in Indiana. Your federal tax is graduated, where people who have more money pay a higher rate. Maybe we ought to think about that. I mean, there is a lot of wiggle room. You have to have the courage to do it. But I think we can take a hard look at this stuff. But I will tell you this, I will never vote for any tax plan that takes money out of local government functions, period. And so go to Terry and Jennifer's website. They just announced their property tax plan, and it has a replacement for local units of government to recoup their losses with the tax plan.
Wonderful. Thank you, Trish. Thank you. It is a very complicated issue. It is a very complicated issue, but it's nice and refreshing to hear that all of these candidates are willing to tackle that issue and do so in a way that doesn't hurt us. So we're down to our last 5 minutes, and my most complicated issue is combining these last questions into some logical closeout for these panelists. And I've been sitting here reflecting on how I was going to do this, and it sounds like one of the biggest themes that's coming out of this is that it is critical that we elect more Democrat candidates to the General Assembly. So whether we're talking about the massive Medicaid shortfall from our General Assembly that's caused all kinds of embarrassment, or the increase in challenges that our rural communities have faced with the opioid and fentanyl epidemic, our mental health challenges, especially among our youth right now, or the abysmal policies that have been put into place that have hurt Indiana, such as right to work. There are lots of issues that need to be overcome. The reality is, even if we vote for and elect every single person that's running on the Democrat ticket, we still won't have the majority. Okay? So if these three candidates make it through and they become our representatives, they're going to have to work with Republicans. So knowing all of these challenges that exist and all of the things that we have to tackle, and realizing the rhetoric from the Republican side is so often full of hate and division, I want you to close out today, and I'm going to give you strict 2 minutes because we don't want to hold people over and get where we're at our time, and I'm a stickler for time. I want you to take 2 minutes, and I've been talking so you can start to kind of think through this. 2 minutes to summarize how you were going to work with your Republican counterparts so that things happen for Hoosiers, not get shut down. And I won't even assign this. I'll take whoever's willing to go on this first. Jennifer says she's up. Go for it, Jennifer.
Okay. This is what I've spent my whole career doing, is working with people that have very different interests and very different belief for the common good. Now, typically the common good is an individual that has special needs or is vulnerable, so there's just definitely a lot of sensitive issues to talk about. And you would think that it would be easy, and it is not. So I feel like I have a lot of experience with that. Even in my community, I work with a lot of Republicans. One of the speakers that came here, and I'm not going to tell you which one, is actually a Republican that came earlier and spoke. And I think that just goes to show that I am able to work with people. I seek out working with people. It's not always about the R or the D. Hopefully, I know there's decent Republicans out there. I know some of them. And I know that there are some actual horrible ones, because I know some of them too. But I would just work as I do now. I feel like it's all about the relationships. And so building relationships, building trust, and respect, that is definitely the way that I would go.
Wonderful. I didn't even have to stop her. She came in under her 2 minutes. Give her a round of applause. And thank you, Jennifer, for answering with us tonight. There's so many unanswered questions. I know that people are going to want to talk to you. Ross, you've grabbed that microphone. Are you going next?
I'm going next.
All right, 2 minutes starts. Explain to us how you're going to work to get things done.
Well, so I think the first thing, as somebody who looks at kind of why things happen the way they do at the State House, candidates can get unlimited campaign contributions in the state of Indiana at the state representative level from individuals. You may not know that, but a legislator or a candidate can literally get $1 million from somebody. That's ridiculous. That just leads to corruption. And when we wonder why sometimes Republicans, side with payday lenders and some of the worst polluters in the world, well, that's a big reason. And another thing that needs to change is that our legislature has no ethics rules. They really don't. As a legislator, you can get bribes. They call them gifts, but lobbyists can come and give you Super Bowl tickets. Lobbyists can come and give you dinner at St. Elmo's every night, and they do it. And that's not a campaign contribution. That's directly to you. Hey, come out with me. I'll buy you a steak. That's ridiculous. I can pledge for myself, and I think I speak for these guys. I would not take a sandwich from a lobbyist, much less sports tickets or any of those things. So we got to have some reform. And if people weren't looking for the dollar, we might get somewhere. I think there are reasonable people out there on all sides. But if they're not blinded by money, they might be looking at what's best for their community. And that'd be where I would start.
Wonderful. And Ross comes in under his 2 minutes, too. Thank Ross for his time and for his promptness. Good job, Ross. Trish, the challenge is set. Can you also come in under your 2 minutes?
Right on.
All right. Tell us what you're going to do to make things work for us.
Number one, please grab one of these on your way out. It has votes that the legislators, the incumbent legislators against whom all of us are running, have cast votes in the General Assembly that hurt us. We just have to know this stuff so that when you talk to your neighbors and you want to know why are we are running to correct these wrongs. And then on the back, there's a way for you to reach out to every one of our campaigns, either through Facebook or through our websites. And please, I encourage you to do that and send your questions there. I will say that my dual citizenship in the world of politics really helps me because I do have some very genuine, authentic, good relationships with some of the Republican legislators, and not every one of them is horrible on every single thing. I'll just leave it at that. But I agree with Ross, and I know Jennifer feels the same way, and I'm sure all of our people in the Rural Summit group would take a pledge not to take a cup of coffee from a lobbyist, because we want to represent you, we want to do what's right, and we don't need to be influenced by that nonsense.
Good job. Trish also comes in under her 2 minutes. These guys know their job. Wonderful. Thank you so much.